going on, chat boobs? We're all losing our mind out here in quarantine. But have you taken a minute and thought about what the world would look like after this coronavirus outbreak is over? Well, the decisions our society and governments take in the next few weeks will most likely shape our world for years to come. The impact will not only be felt in public health, but across the board in terms of politics, the economy, and our cultures. For now, we have social distancing, flattening the curve, herd immunity, self or state-imposed quarantine, working from home, no traveling, not a lot of toilet paper, and the online world has basically become our life. But how will all this affect us after COVID-19 is over? Yuval Harari argues that the bigger picture revolves around two big choices. The first is between totalitarian surveillance and citizen empowerment, and the second is between nationalist isolation and global solidarity. Governments have already introduced new surveillance tools to tackle the pandemic that would have been considered dystopian science fiction a few decades ago. China, for example, has employed mobile apps, close monitoring of smartphones, and hundreds of millions of facial recognition cameras, and measures such as forcing people to check and report their body temperature in order to identify coronavirus carriers, track their movements, and identify anyone they come in contact with. This Black Mirror-esque world is not just taking shape in China. Israel's security agency has now been allowed to deploy counter-terrorist cyber tracking technology to surveil coronavirus patients. It's important to mention here that the Israeli parliament actually refused this measure, which then had to be passed by PM Netanyahu as an emergency decree. Is this dangerous territory? Are we essentially choosing health over our privacy? And it's also a question of the type of privacy we're giving up. Harari warns of a dangerous transition from over-the-skin surveillance to under-the-skin surveillance. For example, he describes a hypothetical scenario where we're all forced to wear biometric bracelets that monitor body temperatures and heart rate 24 hours a day. Now, the theoretical upside is that with this kind of system, authorities would know that you are sick even before you do, and they would also know where you have been and who you have met or who you've interacted with. So chains of infection and disease transmission could be drastically shortened. But it's not all peachy, because the government would also know what happens to your body temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate every time you watch a video or do anything really. A system like this would basically give authorities access to information about what makes you cry, laugh, and what makes you angry. It would basically be like Cambridge Analytica on steroids. And even if such measures were only used during an emergency, history has shown repeatedly that emergency decrees can often be extended well beyond what was initially intended. Harari explains that we can avoid such a situation if we take a look at the examples of Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea. He argues there is greater value in having a self-motivated and well-informed population that has reciprocal trust and transparency, rather than an ignorant and over-policed society. Globalization has in many ways been undermined by the coronavirus epidemic. Harari points out the importance of choosing global solidarity rather than nationalist isolation. Now, global solidarity can occur on three levels. The first is medical, and now I'm quoting Yuval Harari. He says, countries should be willing to share information openly and humbly seek advice, and should be able to trust the data and the insights they receive. We also need a global effort to produce and distribute medical equipment, most notably testing kits and respiratory machines. And it doesn't only depend on the wealth of the country, more its ability to help. For example, we've witnessed the value of Cuban doctors, a country which, although under sanctions, has been able to extend help as far as Italy. Global travel might also be derailed in the coming months. Suspending all international travel could be very detrimental. And I'm quoting Yuval Harari again, and he says, countries need to cooperate in order to allow at least a trickle of essential travelers to continue crossing borders. Scientists, doctors, journalists, politicians, business people. This can be done by reaching a global agreement on the pre-screening of travelers by their home country. But Harari criticizes what he sees as the international community's paralysis. This could be due to the lack of global leadership present at the moment, particularly if we look at the US. The 2008 and even the recent Ebola crisis, the US was a global leader. But the Trump administration has all but abandoned its allies, not even notifying the EU when it cancelled all travel across the pond. And the president is too busy causing a fuss about what he thinks should be called the Chinese virus. And so the question is, where is our world headed? And can it ever look the same after this is all over?